Welcome back to another episode of the Therapy Show. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard, and I got to tell you guys, I'm really enjoying these Monday episodes. Thank you so very much. Like I'm clapping my hands as I say that. Thank you so much for all the feedback and kind comments that I received for last week's episode on answering listener questions. I guess when I'm just talking to you guys and answering questions, it's a very different type of experience than when I'm interviewing somebody or I have more of a, more content that I've researched and looked into and have a guest on the show. So I'm going to do more of these answering your questions, just kind of bringing you more stuff, maybe behind the scenes of the podcast. But for me to do that, I would love it for you to send in your listener questions. So the way to do that is to go over to my website, lisamustard.com, and click on the contact form, or feel free to just send me an email, lisa@lisamustard.com. And every now and then I do a call for listener questions over on Instagram, which is Lisa Mustard Podcaster. So if you're not following me over there, give me a follow. Would love to connect with you over there. I am working to bring some really interesting and cool guests onto the podcast. And so if you have ideas, feel free to also send me a message if there's somebody out there that you think would be a great guest for the show. Would love to follow up with you and, find out why you think they'd be a good guest for the show and then maybe bring that person onto the show. Okay, so this episode is actually an episode that I released on a private podcast feed, and it's so good. It's so, so good that I thought it would be a shame not to release it on the Therapy Show. So you are going to hear from Professor David Halakmi, who is a history professor at Cypress College in California. He is a beacon of knowledge in the realms of history, specifically focusing on Western civilization in the Middle East. He's been teaching for 27 years. His passion for history doesn't stop at the classroom doors. It actually goes into the digital world through his YouTube channel called David in History for the Ages, which has garnered a significant following, including over 10,000 subscribers. I'm sure he would love it if you would go over to his YouTube channel and give him a subscribe. But in this episode that you're going to hear in just a second, we talk about a topic that resonates deeply with a lot of people out there today, which is the concerning rise of anti-Semitism on college campuses. He's going to talk about historical roots of the issue, its evolution, and the many, many reasons behind its prevalence in academic settings today. We're going to talk about how education and awareness can be powerful tools in addressing and countering these challenges. So you're also going to hear me bring up the term Kesher Shalom, which is a project that I got involved in after October 7th. The links to learn more about Kesher Shalom will be in the show notes, and you can go over there and learn more about it. It's a trauma training for therapists, parenting, and group support for college kids. We have a lot of things going on. Would love it if you subscribe to that newsletter. Just click the link in the show notes. But if you're a student, educator, history buff, or someone just seeking to understand the complexities of our society better, this episode promises to be both informative and thought-provoking. So let's just dive into this episode with David Halakmi of History for the Ages. Okay. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Kesher Shalom podcast. I'm Lisa Mustard. I'm excited to talk with Professor David. I didn't ask how to say your name. Can you say it for me? Halakmi? Halakmi. Got it.
That Hanukkah H,
yes.
It's like an H in that class, so Halakmi.
Professor David Halakmi, welcome. It's so great to meet you and to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. This is nice. I'm always happy to kind of reach people with history and material and what's going on in colleges. I've been a history professor now for 27 years, I think, or starting my 27th year, something like that. I lost track. Been at the college I'm teaching at, Cypress College, now for 24 years. And I love teaching history, and most of my material is about Western civilization and the history of the Middle East. And I'm very lucky I've been able to put them all on my YouTube channel now. So I really hope people kind of go. It's David in History for the Ages.
Okay.
Is my little YouTube channel. And that all started on accident when we had to go online. I never taught online, and then I had to record my lectures. I put them on YouTube, and then people were like, oh, this stuff's good. And it started to grow and grow a little bit. And so I kind of just hit like 10,000 subscribers on it.
That's a big deal. Congratulations. That is a really big deal. So we will put go ahead.
A lot of homeschoolers.
Right. Okay.
Really kind of gravitate to it because it's just free lectures for them. So
right. from a
Yeah.
professor, right? Like
Yeah.
that's super cool. So
Mm.
homeschool moms out there,
Yeah.
definitely take out check out his YouTube channel, but we'll put the link in the show notes for everybody to
Cool.
just all you got to do is click on it and then hit subscribe and you will then be able to see all his awesome videos. I've watched a couple and they are very good. And
Thank you.
I've showed my kids, so I feel like they're great lessons and you do such a fabulous job of explaining it. So today we want to talk about anti-Semitism on college campuses. And that's something that, you were sharing before that we hit record, that this has been going on actually a lot longer than most people
Yeah.
realize.
I
So,
mean, I remember when I started to teach, I think it was a second year, there was a speaker coming into the campus and they talked about 9/11 and how the Jews were responsible for 9/11. And that was on a college campus. And, I'm always a firm believer in free speech and free ideas. I'm definitely not somebody who believes in censorship or anything of that nature, but that even somebody thought this was a good idea to invite somebody like that to speak says something about what's going on here. And this was like 20 years ago, right? And, over the years, this has been going on. I think most people only now have been aware of it because of after October 7th. And then, we saw people celebrating on college campuses. And then we saw the Jewish students harassed and Jewish students had to hide in libraries. And people are like, what's going on? What's going on? And then they were finally exposed when, Harvard and Penn and all those presidents went to Congress and they couldn't explain it well because they kind of dug themselves in this intellectual hole creating this.
mhm.
And it comes from many places, right? It's not, why is it there? There's many causes, and we can kind of go through some of them, as we talk here.
Okay. Yeah, I would love for you to take us through some of those reasons and
I
causes. That'd be
mean,
great.
sure. I think one of the basic things, even starts before college, is simple Holocaust education,
Mhm.
education about Israel, education about anti-Semitism. I think we do a pretty good job in the U.S. if we go through K through 12 and we teach people about the civil rights and Martin Luther King, and we don't whitewash our history. And I think that's good. I'm not one who thinks we should whitewash our history. We've had slavery, we've had, Jim Crow laws, and we teach a lot about that. And so people are aware by the time they get to college. It's not some weird concept for them where they walk into a college class and they don't know who Martin Luther King Jr. is, right? They know, everybody knows. But in the K through 12 system, even before they get to me, I mean, I have students come to my college class. They can't tell you how many people were killed in the Holocaust. They can't tell you name one concentration camp. They can't tell you anything about the ancient history of Israel or, the land and why is it called Israel instead of Palestine and how this goes all back to the Roman Empire when the Roman Empire tried to destroy the Jewish identity by renaming the land. That's where the name Palestine comes from, right? They wanted to destroy the identity of the Jewish peoples. The Roman Emperor Hadrian just said, we'll stop calling it Judea, Israel, and we'll stop calling it Palestine, right? Nothing to do with the modern day Palestinians, even. But so there's no knowledge coming in. So
Mhm.
I think that's already a problem that people really need to work in the K through 12 and say, hey, we need to reach these kids. What made me make this video is not only what I saw, but I saw this poll, and I forget exactly where the poll was, but something like over 65% of 18 to 24-year-olds believe Jewish people are quote unquote oppressors, oppress other people. How do you get that kind of thinking? It doesn't come in a vacuum. So I think that's one part of it, even before they get to me, before they
Right.
get to college.
Okay. That's really important. And,
Yeah,
and so you're in California though, right?
right.
So okay, because I'm in South Carolina. I grew up in
Uh-huh.
Virginia. I had tons of education, but I'm 50, so this was,
We're
in the
same age.
80s.
Yeah.
And
Me
then
too.
I'm sorry.
I'm 50 as well.
Yeah,
So
so, did you grow up in California?
yeah, so I was
Okay.
born in Israel. We moved here when I was like 4 or 5. My
Hmm.
family moved here, and yeah, I grew up in California my whole life. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So you got education around the Holocaust.
a little bit, but
Okay.
even but I mean, I think I learned more from home and from
Right.
family, and my family were Jewish people born in Iraq, and they were refugees, and they lost everything. I mean, that's another topic people know
Yeah.
nothing about.
Right. Right.
About what happened to the Jewish people in the Arab world. I actually have a video just on that as well on my
Okay.
YouTube channel, just what happened to the Jews in the Arab world. And it's an important topic as well.
Yeah.
So I think I learned more from other places, but I have to say, I mean, high school was a while back for me now.
Yeah,
I'm
I know.
back. But, do I remember it being taught that much to me? Not really. Not
Yeah.
really, even as a student back then.
I guess I'm just thinking I'm a little biased too because, being Jewish, growing up and, you go to Sunday school, you go to Hebrew school, you're
Right,
around, you have family who survived the Holocaust.
right.
So it's like, of course you know about it, you
Yeah.
know? But you're right. Like I think about my public education and I know we talked about it. I mean, I know we read The Diary of Anne Frank. I know I look at my seventh grader and she's actually learning about the Holocaust right now and her I want to say she's doing it in her it's an English class. I can't remember if it's I
Mhm.
think it's English. But yeah, you're right. Like it's just one of those things that we don't spend a lot of time
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Okay. So they come to you in
So
college
they
and
come to
they
me and they're all either blank slates or they don't know much. And then they enter the college environment. And when they enter the college environment, colleges have become kind of these thought bubbles, I think, in not a good way, where basically almost everybody thinks the same. They all come from the same political spectrum. And one core idea that I think is problematic is they view almost everything in the lens of power.
yeah.
It's kind of almost this Marxist kind of ideology. They haves and they have nots.
Mm-hmm.
And Jewish people historically have done well,
Mm-hmm.
right? They do well in math and science and literature. I think I saw something on the Nobel Prize and how, we're like 0.2% of the population. We won 22%. I don't know the exact number of Nobel Prize winners. And therefore, on a college environment, because Jewish people are seen as successful and Israel is seen as stronger, they kind of draw this false morality of, well, you're stronger, you're successful, so you must be the oppressor and not the oppressed. And I think that's a big problem of the narrative because, I use the example of, okay, so let's say we're fighting World War II, right? And at one point, the Germans, the Nazis, were weaker than the Allies towards the end of the war.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody would say, hey, this is a problem that we're hammering the Nazis when they're almost out, down out. We need to end that. But the mentality is not that way today in terms of if somebody has power, they must be the oppressor.
Right.
And I think that drives a lot of the narrative. So they say Israel is stronger than the people in Gaza. Well, yeah, Israel's strong, but that's a good thing. You don't want the people chanting deaths to Jews and death to America and all that being the stronger side. But they don't see it that way. So I think that's part of the problem as well. I think another issue, and this is a sensitive topic for many people on colleges, but it's there, is DEI. And DEI programs, diversity, equity, inclusion, oftentimes, and there's a great website called the Amcha Initiative, where they document anti-Semitism on college campuses. And you could see so many times that it's come from speakers and guests that have been part of the DEI initiative. And it's the E in DEI, equity, right? That Jewish people succeed, right? They do well. So, again, they're not ever seen as part of that, the people who've done, and then, why have Jewish people done well and succeeded? That goes to family life and education and values. And this brings up envy. And, another topic I have is forget college, why we have anti-Semitism in society, right? And I have a whole other video on that as well. And that goes through things like blood libels and people being envious and issues of God, God's chosen people that people don't quite understand.
Yeah.
So I think that envy drives a lot of it. Instead of people looking at Jewish people and saying, hey, why are they successful? Why do they do well? Let's copy that. Let's do that. Let's learn from that. Let's use those same values and traditions and customs, even if you're not Jewish, to succeed. They go, well, they must be cheaters, they must be liars, they must be the possessors, and all these anti-Semitic tropes that fuel it.
Right.
And I think that's part of it as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think another issue that drives it is just the silence and we saw this when those college presidents were interviewed, when they were asked, if there was chance calling for killing Black people on colleges, would that be okay? Or LGBTQ or any other group? And the answer, of course, is no. No one would tolerate that. But when it happened to the Jewish people, they didn't know how to answer that question. And they ended up looking foolish. And that's why, at least two of them already resigned
Yeah.
because they couldn't explain it clearly. So I think that's a problem. Why are they quiet on it? And
Hmm.
that one, I haven't put my finger on yet. Right.
Yeah, that's a big one for me too. I don't understand that. I don't
I,
I
I
don't
mean, I've talked to one former college president, and part of it, I think, is fear
yeah.
that if they do come out and condemn anti-Semitism, including anti-Zionism, I think that's a big part of it too. Is
Hmm.
this whole thing, what is Zionism, right? And Zionism is nothing more than just the idea that the Jewish people should have a Jewish homeland. I tell people, can you be critical of Israel and not be anti-Semitic? Absolutely.
Hmm.
Can you feel bad for the people in Gaza being killed and not be anti-Semitic? Absolutely. But
Hmm.
when you call for the entire destruction of the state of Israel and its existence, that is anti-Semitic, and that is what anti-Zionism is, right? No one would be okay on a college campus say, hey, let's eliminate Mexico, let's eliminate Canada, right? Let's eliminate any other group. But with the Jewish people, there's this double standard. And I think part of it is college presidents are afraid to go there because if they do, they're worried that the opposition are going to start holding rallies and start making noise and start threatening. And one thing we've seen the Jewish rallies, and one thing you don't ever see with the Jewish rallies, there's no violence,
Hmm.
there's no graffiti, there's no, doing any of these things, right? They go, they sing, they dance, they pray, they
Right.
clean up after themselves, and they go home.
Right.
All right. And when we've seen on the news the rallies from the anti-Israel side, we see what they do, right? They shut down streets, they threaten people, they bully people. And I think in part maybe colleges don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
So they rather be quiet. But it's that silence, and this is that eerie parallel to the 1930s, right? Why did what happened? There's too much silence about anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And it was MLK, a great quote. He said, we'll not remember the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends.
Yeah.
I don't think most of these folks in academia are bad. I just think they're afraid to speak up.
Hmm.
And that's a problem. And they need to. They need to start speaking up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I've, so many thoughts that are going through my head as you're
Yeah,
sharing
sure.
all this. And I just wonder, I read somewhere about, I think it was at Harvard that I forget if they were like the recruiters or whoever, and they sent out the early acceptance letters and
Mm-hmm.
they couldn't understand why people weren't accepting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, what do you mean you can't understand why people aren't accepting early
That's the
admittance
thought
to
bubble.
Harvard?
That's part
Yeah,
of
it's
the
like,
thought bubble.
but it
Yeah. I
blows my
mean,
mind that they don't understand that. I
yeah,
just
because
don't
they
get it.
all it's colleges have become this really amazing group thing
Oh, it's horrible.
where I'm a pretty popular professor. Students love my classes, they really enjoy it.
Hmm.
I don't know if I would be hired today if I
Yeah,
went to an interview. If because they ask you like DEI questions. And
right.
if I were to openly say, I have issues with things like grading for equity because I think it hurts students, doesn't help students, and some of the other initiatives, they may say, well, you're not a good fit.
Hmm.
And as those of us who are left to think a little bit differently retire, I didn't know in 10, 20 years if there's going to be anybody left on colleges that
Hmm.
aren't part of. I mean, I don't like making this into politics and stuff, but there's almost no difference between the hard political left ideas and, let's say, platform and colleges, whether it's on DACA, affirmative action, any topic. It's like they walk lockstep. They're all thinking the same. And there's no diversity of ideas, right?
Right.
They talk about diversity, but we need diversity of ideas.
Right.
And I think we're losing that. And as you lose that, that's why they're like surprised. It's like, what? There are other people who think differently? Yeah.
Right. So what is this? I know you teach, it sounds like a smaller college where you
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
are. Okay.
Community college,
So,
yeah.
what's the tempo on the students that you have right now that are coming to your classes? Like what are they expressing to you when they learn about
So
this?
I
And
will say this, community colleges, I think, are more grounded
mhm.
than some of the Ivy Leagues Even these are students who kind of work, they have families, they're more grounded in reality, and I don't think we have quite the same issues. We have we have the same issues, but I think they're lower, right, than what you see at the big universities. What I notice is when I simply talk to them and explain them the basic history, it's clear,
Mm.
right? And when I give the history, I always, I have to give an honest narrative, right? I don't, when you talk about the wars with Israel and this and that, I tell them, yeah, there were 700,000 Arab refugees in 1948. But I explain to them why.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell them, yeah, the Arabs told them, leave because we're going to conquer Israel, then come back, right? That part's never told in the other classes to the other students. So I tell them the whole story. And when you tell them the whole story, and I'm never afraid to tell the whole story because I know if you tell the whole story and everything and you explain it, there is no moral equivalency. You get it, right? There's one side that wants to live in peace, wants to share land, was willing to, made many peace offerings, and the other side simply does not want Israel to exist. And that's just the reality. And I tell my students, how will this problem be solved? It'll be solved when they are willing to allow Israel to exist.
Right.
And Arab nations that have done that have made peace with Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Anybody who's made, and how many people don't know that there are Arabs who live in Israel?
Right. Who are
Non-Jewish
Israeli.
Arabs live in Israel.
Right.
Free voting rights, free, speech, free press, serve in parliament, right? The irony is a Muslim Arab living in Israel has more rights and freedoms than any Arab living in any other Arab country today. Right? Go to Gaza and support the LGBT community. What happens?
You're dead.
You're dead. And that's the other issue. It's this intersectionality. It's another thing I mentioned in my video that is just shocking when you see people, and not everybody, because I know some people in the LGBT community are finally waking up to this and going, what are we doing? How can we keep supporting, anti-Israel causes when we know if we went to Israel, we can have a great gay pride parade, and we go to Gaza and we're thrown off a roof.
Right.
And it is this kind of mentality. It's like, it's part of my team, so I have to stick with it, even if the emperor has no clothes. Right. And I think slowly some people are waking up to that, but still, it's like once people get ingrained as, I have to support this cause, it doesn't matter. The facts don't matter. The reality doesn't matter. Yeah. And it's frightening that people can get brainwashed to that degree.
Yeah. And speaking of the facts don't matter, when I see people saying that Israel is committing a genocide
right.
that's an apartheid state,
right.
I just want to pull my hair out because I'm like, where are you getting this from? Like,
I mean, it's a blood libel. It's no more different than the blood libels that the Jews killed Christ, or the blood libels that they used the blood for rituals. Right. All you have to do is look at the numbers. The Palestinian population numbers have been going up dramatically, right? That's not how a genocide works.
Right.
When Israel goes into Gaza, they literally tell them, get out of there. We don't want to kill civilians. Get out of the way. Right. That's not how a genocide works, right? And meanwhile, Hamas, we know, uses their own people as human shields because they know, one thing about them, they know that it's this level of how much they hate the Jewish people that they will allow their own kids to be killed by using them as human shields. So then they could parade them on Western TV. And then they show this, say, oh, look how bad Israel is. Because they care more about destroying Israel and the Jewish people than their own livelihood. Yeah. I made another short video. It really triggered a lot of people. But I talked about, when Israel left Gaza in 2005, billions of dollars were given. Billions to them in Gaza. Yep. They could use that money for education, for infrastructure, for high tech. What did they use that money? Living on coastal land, right? They could make an oasis there. Instead, they use the money for tunnels and rockets and promoting hate. And, why do that? Why can't you just take all that money and live a luxurious life, live a good life? Because they hate Israel's existence more than anything.
Yeah. It's amazing. It blows your mind.
Yeah, I mean, the only other issue I can think of in terms of college campuses and this is not one I've kind of thought of, but other people told me and I included it, is maybe money, funding, where there's been a lot of reports that a lot of these Ivy Leagues are funded by Arab nations. and, follow the money, and, that's just human nature. You don't want to alienate people who give you money.
Right.
And I don't know how big of a problem it is for me. I mean, even if that didn't exist, I think we'd still have this problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think it helps, but I don't think it's at the core of the issue.
Yeah. Well, I know that we have therapists listening that are Jewish. We have therapists who have Jewish clients listening. We have Jewish parents listening. We have a range of listeners to this podcast feed. What do you have any recommendations or, suggestions for parents out there or, therapists that are working with, college kids right now that might be experiencing, is there anything that you know of that they can possibly do on their college campus that maybe we're not aware of to, help or to.
Well, obviously find community. I
Mhm.
think that's really important. Find a community, and you'll find that you don't just need to be Jewish community. There are a lot of Christians. There are a
Oh, yeah.
lot of students who aren't Jewish, the righteous Gentiles.
Mhm.
And if you can find that community, I think that helps. And I think be strong in your convictions and your knowledge. I think, knowledge is that power. And even I'll talk to Jewish students who don't know the history,
Yeah.
right? And I think parents don't know the history, and you give them this information. So somebody throws this at you, you could say, no, I know this. I know that, what happened in the 1967 war. And I know, people talk about, oh, Israel and West Bank and Gaza. Well, from 1948 to 1967, West Bank and Gaza were not even controlled by Israel. They
Mhm.
were controlled by Egypt and Jordan, respectively, right?
Mhm.
And, if they really, really cared that much about the Palestinian people from 1948 to 1967, they could have easily created a nation for them,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
And so just knowing that information, knowing that after the 1967 war, Israel said, we will give land back that we want, right? Just make peace with us. And they met in Sudan and they had this conference and they said, no peace, no recognition of Israel, no nothing, right? People don't know that.
Yeah.
And, that's one of the things I really strive to do with all my lectures, to give them that knowledge. And that's why, again, other than all my stuff that we've been talking about recently, you can go through an entire playlist and learn the whole history. You
Okay.
can't, another issue is not colleges, is social media,
Yeah.
right? You can't learn this stuff on 10-second TikTok. You can't. And, and too many young people are on these social media things. They're getting this stuff. They just take it for gospel. They don't have the wanting to sit and listen and learn to a 30-minute lecture. And I think that's something that we really need to work on as well. It's just getting that to people. It's just like, don't just listen to 10-second TikTok. It's not going to solve your problem
I know. I hate TikTok.
there.
I hate it. And I hate it. Well, one of the reasons I don't like it is well, for that, of course, is misinformation. But then, in the therapy space, they make it trendy, they make it cool, they make it like 10
Yeah.
seconds and you can have, whatever. And I don't know.
No, I mean social media. One thing, I have kids, and one thing I will die on this mountain. I don't want them on social
Yeah.
media
Yeah.
for so many reasons.
Right.
For as a therapist, I'm sure you
Hmm.
know what it's done to girls, especially,
Yeah.
and the body images and all the stuff,
Mm.
and yeah, it's just
Yeah.
I
We
see
are,
adults who can't handle it
yeah,
well.
yeah. Our kids don't have it. I have a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old. They don't have social
Yeah,
media. I have it for the podcast and for other
yeah,
things, but
yeah. Me too.
I'm so burnt out on it. Like, I'm always trying to think of other ways to promote what I do and to get the word out
Right.
there. But you have to use it. You
Yeah, I
just have
have
to
to.
be
I mean,
smart about it,
that's why I have my YouTube channel, and I
Mhm.
created a Facebook page as well, History for the Ages.
Yeah,
And I created the Facebook page in large part to help reach all the homeschoolers.
smart.
But that's not quite as big as the YouTube channel, but still it's got like 7,000 followers, and that helps me bring them to the
Yeah,
YouTube channel. And then
yeah,
people said, do Instagram and do TikTok and do that. I'm like, I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore,
yeah,
right? Either it's going to spread or it's not. And this is for me a side thing, right? My job is my job. My
right.
family is my family. That's my priority. This is just something that's happened. And, I'm more than happy to get these messages out as much as I can, because we really, we can't stay silent on this stuff. This is the problem.
Right. I agree with you. And I'm so glad that we got a chance to talk. And so
Yeah.
what I would like to do is we'll put links to the videos in the comments that
Mhm.
would help explain the history of Israel. Maybe, if you can pick out some that you think that would help our listeners
Okay.
kind of really,
Yeah,
really dive in a little bit deeper and get some
sure.
better context around
Yeah,
what their clients might be coming in with, as well as for anybody who's interested in just learning more about the history. I think that would be super
yeah.
helpful.
One really good one is just what is Zionism? It's
Okay.
like 7 minutes, breaks it down, and most people who see that go, "Oh wow, that makes sense. I can work
Mhm.
with that." And so, but yeah, I'll definitely I can email you the
Perfect.
links and
Okay.
you
Well,
know.
this has been great. Thank you so much for your time, and this has
Yeah,
just
no, I'm
been so
glad we did
helpful.
this. Yeah, the more
Yeah.
people we can reach, the better. We're all in this together, and we all have a kind of a role, different. All of us have a different role. We have our strengths, and we need to
Yeah.
use them all.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll have you back. We'll
Okay,
maybe
that'd be
come up with
great.
another topic. So,
Okay,
thank you so much for being here.
right.